I'm used to speaking to hundreds, well, dozens, hundreds, thousands, I don't know, lots of people at one time. I rarely ever see them. So this is a bit of a different experience. And I can appreciate everyone before me for the sense of anxiousness and energy, because I'm totally feeling it. And being the 10th person to speak to you here today, having to watch all of these magnificent performances, these great thoughts being shared, the things that I've learned here this afternoon, I'm a little intimidated. But I'm happy to be here. And why am I here? I'm not exactly sure, but that's been an answer to a couple of the larger questions in my life. I'm here because I'm affiliated with St. Thomas as a student in the master's program at the Center for Faith and Culture. Father Nesty is someone whose door I have worn down and will follow as long as I possibly can, and have learned a lot. I, for some odd reason that is a talk that will be delivered on a different day, took a 36-year break between my undergraduate studies at Baylor and my master's studies here at the University of St. Thomas. But they're definitely closely related. And so I want to talk a little bit about why I actually believe that a better democracy is actually possible through a more diverse media, and what I mean by that. And the very first class I took when I came back to school, I love getting student discounts. That's so cool. Coming back to school, the very first class that Father Nesty almost requires everyone to take, it's called Faith and the Dominant American Culture. And you go back to the roots of American democracy, and you go back to the pre-roots of American democracy, and what the founding members of our country, okay, they're all guys, the founding fathers of our country, what inspired them to create what I still truly believe is this amazing potential that the world has yet to really, truly see fully. Because I don't think we're manifesting it yet. But I think that it's there. And I think that it was built into the very beginnings of our democracy. And when you start looking at that, as you have to if you take this course, you will see that the First Amendment that was built into the Constitution, it gives freedom to the press. It gives freedom to religion. It gives freedom to several very, very important aspects of our culture, of our society, of our country, of our brand new republic, our democratic republic. And why was the First Amendment given this? Why was freedom of the press considered to be so important? It was one of the very first things written into this founding document, without which there wouldn't be a country. It's because when they built this country, the mass media, the internet of that day, was newspapers, pamphlets, broadsides. The printing press was hot stuff, you know? And so in that day, they saw, we've built this system that has legislative, judicial, executive branches. We all learn that, or we should. And then there's freedom of the press. It was called the Fourth Estate. It's this monitor over the whole system, and it's supposed to be independent. It's supposed to be free. It's supposed to be the watchdog on behalf of we, the people. We, the people. And it's not. It's not working very well. I'll tell you why, or why I think. Anyway, you're all smart people. You'll figure it out. So we went from that era at the very beginning, freedom of the press. In the, Morse code, the telegraph, Alexander Graham Bell, come here, Watson, I need you. We've all heard this, the telephone was cutting edge technology when my grandparents were babies. Radio came along around the time World War came along. Television came along in the World's Fair of 1939 in New York. And then color TV. Now we're into the computer, digital, internet, super future, wild, wild world of whatever it's going to be. But it was described, I think, accurately about 50 years ago by a commissioner of the FCC, a guy named Newton Minow, who described it as a vast wasteland, because there was a lot out there, but most of it is garbage. It's kind of like that thing that's collecting out in the Pacific, the Great Pacific Gyre, I think it's called. So in 1968, the Public Broadcasting Act was brought to being by Bill Moyers, who was working for President Johnson. It invented the Corporation for Public Broadcasting. And from this birthed PBS, NPR, some of the better aspects of, I think, Americans' mass media. But in the 1980s, President Reagan eliminated the fairness doctrine from broadcasting. It was no longer required that if you bring in one point of view, you have to offer the other point of view an equal opportunity to share that point of view. In the mid-90s, President Clinton, it's not a Democratic and Republican thing. It's a corporate thing. In the mid-90s, President Clinton, he dissolved some of the rules about how much could be consolidated by one company. There used to be thousands of radio, TV companies, newspaper publishers. Well, that was eliminated too. So in 1983, when I first looked at this, there were about 50, 60 companies that owned pretty much 90% maybe of all the radio, TV, newspaper, billboards, book publishers, magazine publishers, pre-internet. It's before Chevis was born. Or it was when you were born, I'm not sure, but it was about that time. In 2011, that 90% is controlled by about 6 companies. Let me tell you a little bit about some of these guys. You might think that we live in this amazingly diverse world. We can tap in and we can Google, we can go everywhere, we can be anywhere, we can find anything. It's just a question away if you know how to ask it. But it's controlled by so few that we live in a world that is an illusion of diversity. It's not diverse. So here's like the biggies. Walt Disney. Disney's number one. They own ABC. They own Channel 13 right here in town. They own A&E, Pixar. They own the whole Marvel franchise. Wolverine, it's theirs. Lucasfilm, they got it. ESPN, they own 80%. Fandango, they own the Muppets. They own a third of Hulu. Okay, so in the realm of radio, TV, publishing, film, telecom, internet, these behemoths are the decision makers. They're the arbiters of what the diversity that they will show you and hope you buy, they'll deliver it to you for a fee. Time Warner, number 2. They got the whole Turner thing, TBS, TNT, any of the T whatevers. Cartoon Network, Adult Swim, CNN, Warner Brothers, Warner Pictures. They own DC Comics. They got Batman. They got Superman. They own Mad Magazine. Comcast comes next. Xfinity, AT&T Broadband, NBC, Universal Studios, Telemundo. They got another third of Hulu. They also own the Philadelphia Flyers, if anybody's a hockey fan, and the arena they play in. Viacom, another biggie. Paramount Pictures, MTV, Nickelodeon, Comedy Central, Jon Stewart's getting out. TV Land, BET, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, Viacom owns them. CBS has a ton of radio and TV. They also own Showtime. They have TMC, Simon & Schuster. They also own Westinghouse. I used to have a Westinghouse refrigerator. Okay, then Rupert Murdoch. Well, the illusion of Rupert Murdoch. News Corp and 21st Century Fox. Fox TV, New York Post, Wall Street Journal, HarperCollins, Zondervan. That's the Christian publisher. Fox News, FX, National Geographic. They own Sky TV, 100% of Sky Italia. They also own the mystery third of Hulu. They got that too. Okay, and then in the world of radio, there's Clear Channel. You've heard of Clear Channel. Clear Channel morphed into a kinder, gentler version of Clear Channel. It used to be the super behemoth that owned 1,200 radio stations. They started selling off some of those that they couldn't profit from well enough. They only own 850 now, including 6 right here in Houston. They have 50 million subscribers to their new, kinder, gentler service called iHeartRadio. I could give you a list of all their formats because most of you probably fit into one of them because we've all been commodified, we've all been demographically identified. You may be adult contemporary, you may be urban, you may be smooth jazz, you may be dance or EDM or news or talk or sports or CHR, country, oldies, folk, Spanish, maybe you're religious. I want to give you one example of why this diversity, I think, is an illusion. Town of Minot, North Dakota, 2002. Canadian Pacific Railways had a tanker overturned. 250,000 gallons of anhydrous ammonia spilled out about a half a mile from town. There were 8 radio stations in Minot. 6 of them are owned by Clear Channel. Police called the stations. There's nobody home. Well, it turns out that these 6 stations were all being programmed externally by someone in, I think, Chicago. So there was nobody at the switch. The other 2 stations were daytime only, so there was nobody there. So they couldn't even use their own radio stations. The radio waves, believe it or not, television waves, believe it or not, all of this spectrum is ours. It's we the people's. We lease it out to businesses to serve the public interest, if you're interested. So, Quinnipiac College conducted a news poll of American registered voters recently, just last month. Who is your most trusted source of news, they said. 25% of American registered vote, 29% of American registered voters said Fox News. Frightens me. Next up was CNN with 22%. NBC and CBS each got 10, ABC 8, MSNBC 7. That's really kind of a frightening prospect to me as the general manager of Houston's independent Pacifica radio station, the independent station that's truly a local public radio station that is largely powered by the volunteers from the community, people just like you, who have a passion about something, whatever it may be, and they come down to KPFT and they share it there. And I'd like to, I think, illustrate what I think diversity is and what keeps me doing what I do. At KPFT, it's part of a small network that predates the existence of public radio. It was formed in the late 1940s in California by a Quaker, a war resister, a journalist, and he actually believed that we don't need to be commercialized, we don't need to be sold out, we don't need to be commodified, but we need to deliver something that will impact people's lives, that will make them do something with their lives, that will make a difference. And that they will be compelled, because this has value, that they will support it. And it doesn't have to be brokered out commercially. So he invented Pacifica Radio. There's 5 stations. We have about 180 affiliated stations around the world, mainly in small college, towns and little places, Indian reservations, things like that. And we bring together pacifists and activists, convicts, mothers, kids, union workers, queers and vegans and blacks and browns and whites and Asians and Africans, and it's an amazing conglomeration of reality brought into one place and shared with everybody. I mean, we have blues and folk music and Bhangra music and Afro pop and stuff that can't be commodified in a way that'll make you drive this truck, drink this beer, sleep in this bed, or any of those things that we are told we're supposed to do. So, what do I think news should really be about? Well, the news, I used the internet for this, and I got it from Julian Lennon, John Lennon's son. So, what you should know about is why are bats dying by the millions? Why are bees dying by the billions? Why bird populations are plunging? What's the deal with ocean acidification, melting ice caps, deforestation, What are the true dangers of fracking? What about GMO and Monsanto? And what about toxic farming practices? And what about food shortages, drought, soil depletion, the plunge in wildlife populations? What about how to grow food? What are the hazards of industrial pollution? How about your rights? How are they being violated? What about the realities of war and the economics that drive that? What about the prison industrial complex? What about the war on drugs? What about immigration, really? How do we disconnect from fossil fuels? What about permaculture? What about sustainable living? What about campaign finance reform? So instead, this is what we get told. I mean, we can walk outside right now, or those of you who actually don't have a dumb phone can actually pull it right up. What you get told, who just got murdered? What's Justin Bieber doing? Who said what? Kanye West did what? Kim Kardashian, huh? First Lady is doing what kind of workout routine? Who's getting divorced? What's going on in D.C.? What's the corporate, product to buy this week? What's going on with the misinformation about everything? What about these courtroom scandals? Who's gay? What's the latest sports drama? Reality show drama? Who got arrested? How many cars are we selling? What's the latest sex scandal? Who got an award? Seen a good car chase recently? What do you know about socialites? What subtly will perpetuate the fear that permeates our society? And what can we do to keep you tuned in? And fear-mongering is a part of that. So I want to introduce you to a friend of mine, Sparky. Sparky is involved in that story. We're coming up on the 45th anniversary of the day that the Ku Klux Klan blew KPFT up. It's the only radio or television station in this country. It's happened in other countries. It's never happened in America before, never happened since. Happened here in Houston, not once, but twice. In 1970, before most of you were born. I was a kid, too, once, and I was a kid when this happened. And I remember it. And this means a lot to me because this speaks to the intolerance of the times. Houston, 1970, Ku Klux Klan. Ku Klux Klan Police Department. Didn't even want to investigate. So, Sparky stands as a testament to what Houston was and the intolerance. Houston has changed. We've all changed. Houston's much more diverse. It's grown. It's international. It's cosmopolitan. I love Houston. I'm happy that I was dragged here by my dad back in 1970, actually right around this time. But fast forward from 1970 to just 7 years ago, and you can't really see it very well, but I used to work as a volunteer at KPFT long before I was general manager, and all of us volunteers who got to be in the studios at KPFT were told, yeah, we got these big windows looking out on Lovett Boulevard over here in this house in Montrose. It's bulletproof glass, don't worry. AK-47, August 2007. A friend of mine was doing a Zydeco music show. I mean, really, she's a grandmother. It went right behind her head. So we've changed. We've grown up. We've gotten better. We have a lot of work to do still, is what that tells me. What we do is we provide a platform for all the threads that are woven into the tapestry of our community to have the potential to come, open the window to the larger world, speak their truth in whatever way they need to, and then those of us who aren't part of that world, part of that community, we learn we learn through the experience of eavesdropping almost on conversations and sharings in communities that we're not part of. And through that, I can only speak for myself, but I know that it has broadened my horizons. It has made me a more inclusive person, a more curious person, I think a better citizen of this democratic republic. And I work today to keep that vision, to hold that window open through this little house with a little studio, with a little shrine to intolerance of the past, long ago, more recently. And I do it because I'm driven by one of the Beatitudes. Blessed are the peacemakers, for they shall be considered children of God. I feel that. It drives me. It's part of my work, and I thank you.